guys want to August 28th, 2025 Audit and Finance Committee meeting. We acknowledge that we are on traditional lands of Treaty 4 territory, a treaty that was signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. The City of Regina owes its strength and vibrancy to these lands and the diverse Indigenous people whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory, as well as settlers from around the world who continue to be welcome here and call Regina home. Some members of the committee and council administration may be attending the meeting today through video conferencing. I would like to remind these individuals of the following. Please ensure your video camera and microphone are turned off. If a member of the committee wishes to speak, raise their hand function and will be placed into a speaking queue. When speaking, remember to unmute your microphone and enable your video camera. All votes will be conducted and recorded as votes. The deadline to register as a delegation for reports commences consideration by council at this meeting is scheduled for September 10th, 12 p.m., Monday, September 8th. Okay. No, this one here. Okay. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the agenda at the call of the chair? Councillor, please. I will call the question. Any opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes. Can I have someone move a motion to adopt the minutes of the public meeting held July 31st, 2025? Mr. Ng, is there any errors and omissions? Okay. I will call the question. Any opposed? Carried. We will now consider item AFC 25-16, 2024 report on forced labor and child labor in supply chains. Can I ask the CFO and Deputy City Manager Darren Anderson to introduce the report?
Thank you, and through the chair. The City of Regina is required to submit an annual report under the Fighting Against Forced Labor and Child Labor in Supply Chains Act, which came into effect on January 1st, 2024. By submitting this report, the City affirms its commitment to ethical and transparent procurement practices and aligns with Canada's broader efforts to combat forced labor and child labor in both domestic and international supply chains. We submit the report for your review and are open to questions.
Thank you very much. Can I have someone move the report? Councillor Mancinelli? Any questions? Councillor Mancinelli?
So I kind of thumbed through this, not familiar with anything to do with it whatsoever. I see the federal mandate for it now, but trying to figure out what it is and how to apply it. Does this give us more control over choosing local suppliers in the end? Like if we're looking for a piece of equipment that might retail through the States, but come out of a third world country where it's known to have child labor, do we have a reason on our procurement to pay attention to a local supplier now through this act?
So through the chair, I would say that it does not. We still have trade agreements that we have to follow in regards to procurement. And just because it's a local supplier doesn't mean down the supply chain path that they are not procuring items from a third world country. So you'll see in the report that we haven't mapped down the supply chain past our initial supplier at this point. This is a very new process for us, so we're still kind of finding our way on how to ensure that we're being as compliant as possible.
Appreciate that. And I guess all I'm asking is, child labor is horrendous. I get why you want to stomp that out in the world. It makes good sense. You know, I don't want to kill puppies either or anything. I think that's just smart. But trying to see the effects and the positive effects on a local economy as this evolves, you know, is where I'm kind of looking for the long side of where this will evolve to. So I'm just, yeah, I appreciate your answer, and I think I understand.
Yep, and through the chair as well, it is important to note that only 1.8% of our procurement in 2024 was actually outside of Canada. So we do a really good job of trying to keep things within the trade agreements, but as local as possible.
Appreciate that, and I appreciate that that type of a goal to achieve too. Thank you.
Thank you. Through your chair, thank you for the report and the information. Considering, and of course, a good idea. Considering that it's 1.8% of our procurement, and this is the Audit and Finance Committee, what does it cost us to be compliant?
So through the chair, yeah, there's no cost to being compliant with this. So it would just be the cost of our internal staff to write the report. Yeah. And then we're going to build out some new processes. If we needed some additional resources, we'd come back to council to say, okay, you know, we believe this workload is outside the scope of what we're doing right now for the service level. At this point, though, we're not suggesting that. So this report in and of itself is no net new cost to the city.
Would you anticipate that there will be some in the future?
Really hard to know. I guess, you know, because most of our procurement is local to Canada, yeah, I would say the amount of work we have to do appears to be limited. If we ended up getting a whole bunch of international bids on it that ended up winning stuff, obviously then the scope would increase, right? So the further we have to look out into the world to see if we're in compliance with this could add some costs in sometime in the future, but nothing that I'd be aware of.
Okay, thanks for that. Considering that this is a provincial law that we're following, it's a federal law?
Federal law, correct.
Oh, my mistake. Considering it's a federal law, do we sort of keep in contact with someone there? Is there a contact that we have where we can sort of compare notes? Obviously, they're buying much more international than we are. Can we get any indication of what we might expect down the line? Or have they been doing it for a short period of time also? Yeah,
this just, so sorry, through the chair, this came into effect just January 1st, 2024. So this is the first reporting period for any jurisdiction or company that, so this isn't just for government either. So large multinational organizations and companies in Canada have to report on this. Yeah. And it's just brand new. So I would say it's probably unknown at this point.
Yeah, too early to analyze anyway. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And thank you very much. I do have one question on the report, and maybe it's for the acting city manager, just on the corporate governance around these things. So we have this report, it's a federal legislation. What's the checks and balances out there for the federal government to say, hey, are you doing this or not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't say offhand that I know. I mean, I would imagine that the federal government, as with anything like this, has their own criteria by which they check off compliance, et cetera, in terms of any sanctions if we didn't do it. I would imagine they would be bringing some kind of lawsuit against us or something. But we can certainly follow up on that in terms of that compliance aspect of it and what their expectations are for those who don't comply. But again, this really arises, I believe, from the United Nations in terms of what the UN passed, and then the federal government passed this act. So I think it's a cascading effort to reduce and eliminate child labor across the world. But as Mr. Anderson and Ms. Karlik had said, our procurement in Canada our procurement is so largely fixated on Canada that I think I'd venture to say we're in very good shape, but that doesn't mean things won't change in a few years, and given the trade issues going down south, maybe our markets will have to go elsewhere.
Like the way I look at it, there's a risk component to saying somebody in the federal government says you're offside on something, and is there a risk component to this?
So through the chair, I would say because it's early days, I would suggest the risk is quite low. Probably the federal government's trying to feel their way through this at this point. They would have their own procurement, as Councillor Siklis said, that they would have to do this for as well, and then would be getting in an immense number of reports, because it's not just municipal jurisdictions, we believe it's anybody who buys material from around the world. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I wouldn't say that there's a high risk for the city right now in regards to this. And we're trying to be compliant as we can, and we'll follow any guidance we get from the federal government.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Siklis?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Actually, when you mentioned UN, my alarm bells went off. Sorry. Love the UN for some of its things, not for all of its things, but can we get a definition of what forced labor, I mean, I understand what child labor is, I get what forced labor is, but we must have a definition somewhere on, and who's searching that out? Like, we're forced to do this whether we like it or not, number one. Is that correct? Am I assuming that's correct?
It's legislated.
It's
through the
legislated.
chair, It's legislated requirement through the
Great.
federal government.
So who defines what this is, and where do we find that definition?
So the criteria is laid out in the act itself.
Right.
Yes,
So I'd have to go look at the act.
yes.
Which I didn't do before the meeting. Has anyone done it?
We do have some of the criteria. The report itself lays out some of the different criteria, and we respond to each component of that criteria within the report. So where there are gaps, as this is new and where we have to develop process, we have noted that under each, I guess, point.
Okay. I'll take a look at the act. Maybe we can talk about it offline. I just want to get better knowledge about it.
Yep.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I will ask the mover if they want to, wish to close the debate. Call the vote, good to go. Okay. Oh, Mayor Brzezinski? Oh, sorry.
Mayor Brzezinski?
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli? Councillor Siklis?
In favor.
Jamie Ng?
In favor.
Rob Willman?
In favor.
And yourself, Mayor, or
Chair.
Chair, sorry.
In favor.
The motion carries.
We will now consider item AFC 25-17, Vendor Master File Audit. Can I ask the internal auditor, Daniker, to please introduce the report?
Thank you. Good evening, members of the committee. This report provides the Audit and Finance Committee with the results of the Vendor Master File Audit. The primary objective was to evaluate the adequacy of internal controls related to the vendor master and assess if they are effective in mitigating risk of unauthorized or inappropriate payments. Our audit results shows ways we can improve the design and operating effectiveness of key controls that would help make the vendor master file data more complete, accurate, and valid. Key opportunities identified in this audit that would further enhance and strengthen the control environment and management of the vendor master file procedures includes review and approve policy and procedures pertaining to vendor master file management using the city standard policy and procedure template, define the approving authority and supporting documents required for vendor master setup and subsequent change request, specify documentation and evidence retention for validating vendor details at the time of initial vendor setup or any subsequent change, details secondary review procedures for tracking changes to the vendor master file, stipulate the process for periodic deactivation of inactive vendors, ensure segregation of duties so that the vendor management process, invoice processing, and payment actions are not performed by the same employee. Administration has accepted all the recommendations and has already begun correcting and or implementing controls that address many of the audit recommendations. With that, I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I have someone move the report? Councillor DeCleese? And would you like to speak to the report?
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Good work. I was wondering if it's possible to show an example so that as far as I can tell, 5 people that are watching this right now can click like and share to as many as possible so we can beat the regular city council watch rate of this. Now we're up to 6 already. See that? So please give us an example of what that is, because I'm sure some people are wondering, what's a master file? How does that work?
So vendor master file is basically a listing of all supplier data. Their names, address, their banking information. And this process deals with how we enter that data in the file, how we manage changes to that file, and how do we process payments, ensuring there's adequate segregation of duties between the person who enters the data or changes the data and the one who processes the invoice payments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ing?
Thank you so much, Dina, for such an amazing report. You have identified that the role needs to be segregated, to a position that, that aligns to his job title. Does this need to create a new position, or is there someone within the administration that could take on such duty to, update the vendor master file?
Thank you for the question. I would be requesting the administration to answer this one.
Through the chair, so thank you for the question. We've identified this as sort of before the audit as an issue. We've moved this function around and really had a hard time getting proper segregation of duties. We have put forward an extra position in order to satisfy this in prior budget processes that for the past 2 years, and we've sort of cut that position. So it will be coming again in this year's budget process to say we require an additional resource in order to make this happen. Again, very important. All the findings in this report, administration takes very seriously. The segregation of duties one is sort of top of my list, I'll say, given that it gives access for fraud. So while there was no fraud found during the audit and we haven't ever seen it as administration, we believe this is at the top of the list of something we should look at because it can be a material opportunity for someone to do something untoward. So we take it very seriously and we'll be putting forward, as part of our response to this, our request for new resources.
Councillor Mancinelli?
Thank you, through the chair. Really appreciate the report, understand the importance behind it, and appreciate the breakdown of the department for better results. I think the first thing that comes to mind is, for someone who sat in the chair for a while, thank you. When I read this and I look at what's gone on in the office, I know that That would be a tight-knit office who have a lot of people looking for each other's backs and making sure all the processes get done. It speaks to maybe low on manpower and having to have extra hands cover each other's backs instead of having quality controls. So at this point in time, to stop and look at positive ways to have quality checks and proper duties assigned, I think is the right way to go, both for peace of mind for the employees, but also for the fraud risk that Mr. Anderson talked about. But being part of this and knowing some of the stress that's gone through that office, I think that a thank you is owed, and I just wanted to say that out loud. It's understood. The honesty with the risk of fraud, it's been vetted by the auditor, speaks to integrity within the office as well. So one more piece of this after many budgets and trying to figure out how positions work and what's that word? It's not kiting. When you use a position's pay, but you put it through the budget instead of filling position. What do they call that again? Sorry, I forgot the word right now. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. You know, you turn all 30 positions open, only 3 get filled, it goes to budgetary number, the pressure goes up, things go crazy. To see that addressed within the report, kind of reported to, talked to, and plans to change it, rectify it, and get good procedures in there. Very, very much appreciated. I hope it's followed up on quickly and accurately, and I hope that brings a lot together there. So thank you very much. Did I get any viewers?
Acting City Manager, Mr. Nicol?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add to Councillor Mancinelli's comments and that which we heard from both Dinakar and Councillor Siklis is that these audits are part of good financial management. And I think the fact that nothing untoward was discovered speaks highly of administration. And I want to draw everyone's attention as well to previous reports that we've had on whistleblowers that have found no financial malfeasance in administration. So it doesn't mean it can't happen, but that's why controls are in place. And so I think the citizens of Regina and council needs to be confident that we are doing our best with the systems we have. We're going to improve them. And I think the proof is evident that we are very financially, we're managed very, very well in that regard. And hats off to Mr. Anderson and his staff as well.
Thank you very much. And just a comment on everything. I'm going to say on the segregation of duties, I'm sure there's probably segregation of duties between purchase orders to purchase requisitions all the way through the approval processes. With the segregation of duties, just as these policies come into place, it's a reminder that when you're looking at your software systems, that you have the ability within your systems to have the segregation of duties captured within your systems as you're going through the transitional phase next year. Yeah. Councillor Decleese, would you like to have any more questions, or do you want to move the report to close and go to vote?
Just to echo once again, ditto to Councillor Mancinelli, and thank you very much for adding that extra piece in there, Acting City Manager. We are up to 7 now watching and 3 likes. I don't know which camera I have to look to say thank you to, but keep it up. And I guess the overall word that's coming to mind here is the word trust. And, you know, Jason's been here more than once, and for him to say what he said gives me a lot of feeling of trust of what's going on in here, because there can be a lot of criticism of us as a group and as a city, and I think people who are watching this should feel that they can trust that, you know, we're doing things correctly as it pertains to this particular file. And with that, I'd like to close debate.
I will ask to call the vote.
Councillor Siklis,
In favor.
Jamie Eng,
In favor.
Rob Willman,
In favor.
Mayor Bashinsky,
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli,
In favor.
and yourself, Mr. Chair.
In favor.
The motion carries.
We will now consider item AFC 25-18, 2025 mid-year forecast report. Can I ask the CFO and Deputy City Manager Darren Anderson to please introduce the report?
Thank you, through the chair. This report is presenting the city's mid-year financial forecast. As outlined in the report, the city is forecasting a 1.6% general operating fund deficit. The mid-year forecast is based on our most current information we know, the June 2025 actual revenues and expenditures, and our professional judgment. There may be future unforeseen events or challenges that could impact several areas and the delivery of a balanced operating budget at the end of this year. The deficit is primarily related to projected shortfall of the municipal surcharge tax from SaskPower and Sask Energy, the anticipated overage from the new contract signed by Fire and Protective Services, and projected overage in spend on winter road maintenance due to more snow than expected. If a deficit is realized, the current forecast balance in the general fund reserve is $20.7 million to offset any deficit. By legislation, municipalities must balance their budgets and cannot operate with a deficit. This report also includes information on the city's utility fund operations, as well as the city's financially controlled organizations. Administration will be happy to answer any questions. Following, my colleague, Mr. May, is going to run us through Appendix 3, which is just a high-level overview of the major variances, and then we'll open it up for questions. I'll pass it to Mr. May.
Thank you, and through the chair, if you turn to Appendix A3 in your agenda package for this report, it gives you several high-level drivers for what we're seeing in terms of the results that we're forecasting in the general operating fund for this go-round. When I go through this, you can see there's lots of pluses and minuses and lots of detail here. When I go through this, the high level, the big items that are driving what we are forecasting is we are forecasting to have received our budget for grant revenue in the Indigenous Relations Department was higher. We're forecasting a higher amount than what we budgeted for. That is related to the Housing Accelerator Fund revenue, and it was just simply an under budget on our part. As Mr. Anderson said, we are forecasting a $3.6 million unfavorable expenditure variance in Fire and Protective Services, which is related to the collective bargaining agreement that was just signed this year. There's two components to that. One is we had budgeted for an increase while this was being bargained, and the actual settlement came back higher than what we had budgeted for, so that's part of it. The other part is the agreement expired December 31st, 2023, so we have a full year of retro pay that's hitting the 2025 results. As Mr. Anderson stated, we are also predicting to have lower than budgeted revenue from municipal surcharge from electricity and natural gas. On the electricity side, what's driving that is when carbon pricing was introduced, it was being added to the people's electrical bill, and the city was receiving surcharge on that added expense. Now that carbon pricing is going away, we've noticed our monthly receipts from SaskPower for municipal surcharge going down by about 4%, so we're forecasting a shortfall there. On the Sask Energy side, we simply had a miss when we budgeted last year. We budgeted higher 2 years ago, anticipating a rate increase that didn't come, and we didn't correct that when we should have, so we're forecasting a shortfall there. We've also got some small things. We're anticipating slightly higher bad debt expense than we had budgeted for of about $900,000. Planning and development fees, they had budgeted slightly higher by $1 million than what they think they're actually going to receive. That's a volume variance. They had budgeted for more development applications to come in than what they think are actually going to come in this year. And then finally, as Mr. Anderson said, we're probably looking around $1 million in roadways for increased cost of snow removal due to severe weather that we experienced at the beginning of the year. So if you add all that up, plus a couple other the smaller items, you get to the forecast at the end of that page. On the utility side, they're forecasting a favorable variance of $1.7 million, which is really being driven by increased revenue, which is a volume variance. There's no price increase here. This is simply more waters being purchased. That's it.
Thank you very much. Can I have someone move the report? Councillor please. Would you like to speak of the report?
Yes.
Any questions for the members on the report?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just briefly on the snow piece, I feel somewhat responsible for that $1 million because I was making a lot of noise at the beginning of the year, which was November for us. And I remember the mayor and I sitting and saying, I don't know what it's going to cost, but we got to get these contractors on board with us and to help us. I'm assuming the majority of the $942,000 was the contractors and not the ice control material. And having said that, as we look to future years, is there a plan to either add more pieces of equipment and people, or do we leave it as is and that's just sort of what might happen in future years?
Thanks for that question through the chair. I would say, in order for us to, because it's a wide unknown how much snow you're going to get and the timing of it, what we try and do as a rule is sort of provide city services to handle the base load. And then you would use contractors to handle where you're going above. That way we don't have unutilized resources, right? So I don't think we're expecting to grow it that much. More so, and we'll speak to this more when we get into September around some of our forecast meetings, and you'll have an opportunity to ask the snow removal team. But in general, we're trying to keep that base cost there and then supplement with contractors. And then from a budgeting perspective, we've been over for 4 years in a row now, I think. So our expectations of snow has to change. So what we're doing on the budget side is just to say, okay, we're going to have to just up the budget so that we're not continually running a deficit. We do have a reserve that in years where you have less snow, it should provide a cushion. But the cushion ran out, I think 2 years ago. And so now we're kind of running naked, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Right? Where when we do have a little bit of extra snow, it goes right down to a deficit. We don't have a reserve to pull out of. So from a budgeting perspective, we'll be probably asking for a little bit more money, just in the fact that it costs more.
I was going to ask about the historical piece because you and I are both fairly new to this, but thanks for getting that information. Has there been a more than $1 million shortfall in the past? Or is this one of the biggest of the last 4 years?
Sorry, Councillor Mancinelli.
I think Chris Warren would be the authority on this, but if I remember correctly, the winter maintenance budget was reduced, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I think it used to sit at 12 million and was brought back down to 8. And that was to try to keep taxes at bay. And also because we had gone through a period of mild winters. So it looks like we were overcharging for a while, and that's how that reserve got built up. But then we got taught a lesson, and 8's not enough, and plus the cost of the rise of price and everything.
Yeah.
Now we're behind the 8 ball again.
Yeah.
I think that's about the last 4 to 5 years how it came to where we are right now.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Chair.
I have to ask, if there are no other questions, would the mover like to close debate? Okay, thank you. I will call the question for the clerk to call the vote.
Mayor Baczynski,
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli,
In favor.
Councillor Siklis,
In favor.
Jamie Eng,
In favor.
and Rob Willman,
In favor.
and yourself, Mr. Chair.
In favor.
The motion carries.
We will now consider item AFC 25-19, 2025, second quarter capital expenditure. Can I ask the CFO and Deputy City Manager Darren Anderson to please introduce the report?
Thank you, and through the chair. On April 9th, 2024, the Audit and Finance Committee, in report AFC 24-12 Capital Project and Reserve Funding, recommended that the City Council direct administration to include in its future annual capital projects, drop projects, capital carry forward projects, and status on the percentage completion of each project. As part of the city's financial plan, the city sets the capital and operating budgets each year and takes into consideration service level agreements to maintain service standards and community priorities. The 5-year capital plan outlines where the money will be collected and spent in line with the city's priorities according to the vision, mission, values, and long-term financial strategic plan. We submit the second quarter report for your review and are open for questions.
Thank you very much. Can I have someone move the report? Councilors, please. Do you wish to speak on the report? Can I ask if there's any questions from the members on the report? Ask away. You've got 6 people online. Mr. Ing?
Thank you through the chair. Thank you so much, Darren, for the updated report, and especially with the new format of giving us an idea of where each project is and where it's at in its completion. I think it's vital, and not just for us, but also future individuals here and other chairs, to see where we are in the progress and, on all the projects, because it's, always a question mark for everybody. What is this roadway going to be complete, or is this, pothole going to be filled, or this project? But definitely, kudos to you and the team and everybody who put this report together. Thank you so much.
Councilor Mancinelli?
Thank you. That food and beverage services real historical $4 million, that number been changing? Is that always the same number?
Through the chair, so I believe the number's been around there historically, and Mr. May has a deep knowledge of that.
Yeah.
If we want to go back.
I don't want to go deep in. I just think the number changed, and I want to know if I was remembering wrong or not. That's all. It hasn't? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I was wondering, is there something you want to point out to us? Because you haven't highlighted anything. Is there anything in there we should be thinking about?
So through the chair, great question. I think more so in general, when I got this report, because I'm relatively new, the city's very busy in the summer. And so what ends up happening when we get to the end of June is we won't necessarily, so we have engineers and project managers out there doing the real work, I call it, not that what we do isn't real. And sometimes we don't get the invoices approved quickly. They're busy road repairing, doing whatever these capital building stuff. And so there can be a time lag. I'm expecting there to be a lot more activity at the Q3 one, where we'll have staff that have had time to come into the office, make sure that all the invoices have been properly approved, gotten them in through payables. So for me, that was the learning from this one, I'll say, is that, right, the city does a bulk of work in the spring there, and we're busy doing the work, not necessarily shuffling the paper for us accountants to get numbers. So I would say Q3 report is what I'm looking forward to seeing, to see where we kind of really did end up.
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. One question that I do have for myself, and being yourself new and myself new, how are you finding this process where you're having these these reports and you're coming up with the capital carry forward? How are you finding it? How is the rest of the staff reacting to it?
Great question. So, I would say 4 years ago, there was a shift in the expectations around what was expected out of the finance department in terms of reporting requirements. And, it didn't come with any resource changes, right? With no added resources. And so there was considerable strain put on the team. We did have some high turnover during those years, which adds to more strain. I will say in my experience, the team's doing great in turning this stuff around, especially that it's relatively new, right? So one thing to redo a report that was done last year with a newer staff member, another thing to create something brand new with a newer staff. So I've been happy. I have in my chance to speak with staff, they're definitely frustrated at times at the workload. But hopefully once we get the first wave through, we can start to find some efficiencies and be there. We have put forward a couple requests for resources that'll come through the budget cycle, just where we found we're kind of falling flat and we need to bolster, but given the size of the department, it's not a material change. So thanks for the question.
Thanks. Mayor Wyszynski?
Thank you for the report. Just in terms of helping visualize the progress in that, and this is a forward-thinking thing, more of a comment to think about. Something that would be helpful, I think, for me to visualize with all the work we have going on is to kind of indicate we've got the project start and end, to kind of show that spend profile as we go through. So like you mentioned, there's maybe some, work to do to kind of tighten up the timelines on invoice, and that's where we get the data. But even kind of that S curve that you see in a spend profile on a project, to be able to see, how we're talking about making sure that we spend what we say we're going to spend, gives us a bit of an indicator of how we're doing as we go along. So as we tighten up that window, obviously that's first priority, but just something to think about as we go forward. It might be an opportunity to show that spend profile for the different projects. So to the point of highlighting where we should be looking, it might kind of focus us in on our questions.
Yeah, no, through the chair, great suggestion, and we'll definitely take that into consideration and try to build that into the next cycle of this.
Awesome, thank you.
Through you, Chair. This might be sensitive and might require in camera, but I'll just ask, are the conditions for the high turnover now not there anymore?
Through the chair, so I wouldn't say that we need to go private on this. So my out-of-scope staff, so I went and looked in the 4 years prior to me, we had 80% turnover. So, the driving causes of that were previous councils when inflation was 9% and 7%. We did raises of 0.5 and 0.5% for out-of-scope staff. So what that did was, in an industry like mine where the skill sets are highly fungible and you can find another finance job, those people, a lot of our staff took the opportunity to find other employment. I would say that was the biggest driver. We didn't do that this year, thank you. The other thing that has caused the problem and that I'm working with HR on is, so we had our unionized staff getting their union raises, and then out of scope was getting essentially zero. And so now we have places where we have managers who make less than the staff who report to them, because you get that squeeze, right, at the manager level. And so we're dealing with that with HR, but right now we've stabilized, I would say, in the department. We've had we have a large department, 175 to 200 people, so we're getting turnover, but nothing like we saw back in those years. As well, Ms. Kralik has been around for a while, has sort of stabilized some of the angst, I'll say, and in the expectation change that came from this committee in the past, and so I'd say it's more stable.
Thanks for that.
No problem.
Mr. Ing?
Thank you. Through the chair, just a comment. I just want to build on Mayor Paczynski's point, highlighting the importance of meeting our spending targets, and as well, this also relates to the importance of systems, as the chair has mentioned, and hope we can find a way to, to work together, find the right systems, and also help elevate and help it make more efficient for all, the admin staff and for those who are reading this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a comment from myself, or a comment / question as well too. When I go through the report as well too, there's still items on here. I'm going to pick on one, line number 80, recreation equipment, and it's gone since 2006. So somebody's been tracking and trending this thing for a long time now, coming up 20 years. So I fully understand that there's going to be capital going into the different areas, the different fields, the different assets. Now, is this just when this was started, or is this actually getting rolled up into a line item and there's different assets underneath and you're actually closing these things out? Or are we tracking a project for 20 years?
So through the chair, I just want to clarify, make sure it was number 16 in the detailed. Is that the railway maintenance program?
No, number 80, it's on Appendix A 2025. I'm going to look at the page here.
Oh, recreation equipment?
Yeah.
Sure. So, and I'll get Mr. May to fill in, but I'll just say, I believe this is a program, which is a little bit different in the way we handle it. It's a long-term item, and I'll pass it over to Mr. May, who can describe how those programs work.
Through the chair, Mr. Anderson's correct. This is an ongoing program that receives an annual allocation of $200,000 per year to replace treadmills and stair climbers and elliptical machines at rec centers and things like that. So they use that budget every year to replace that kind of equipment to make sure that our customers have a safe and enjoyable experience in our facilities. So it's not a discrete project with a start and an end. It's an annual replacement of equipment that our customers use.
Just a question on programs versus the project. Whenever you put this work together, this takes a lot of your resources. Is this more of an operational expense compared to a program? Like, as soon as you go into a program to this nature, to me, that's an operational expense. This is no different from changing tires now. It's not the fleet replacement, we're changing tires.
Yeah, and so through the chair, I would agree in that characterization. I think we get caught up in accounting. So these are capital assets. When we buy a new treadmill, it'll last for 15 years. So while it's operational in nature in terms of us operating a gym facility, the actual asset itself is a capital asset. So we're replacing multiple capital assets. So instead of having each individual piece of equipment have its own line item in here, we just have a program that allows us to more efficiently say, okay, we're going to spend $200,000 renewing those capital items, but that's why it sits in capital.
Okay.
That makes sense?
100% makes sense. My bigger thought is when you wrap this report and then you look at that thing called the reserve fund, these are very integrated and tied together. These are tied together at the line underneath revenue and spend. These are completely tied together. So yeah, as long as they're identified and they're carried out, but it all plays into that reserve now.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you, through you, Chair. And thanks for bringing up recreation equipment, because it sparked my memory on something. Don't know if this is the right place to ask it, but you talked about some of the hard equipment that could be purchased with that money. Would that also include outdoor equipment like slides, swings, those kinds of things in existing parks?
Through the chair, play elements like that would be part of the capital budget for refurbishing a playground. So that would be separate budget and a separate item in this report.
Okay.
This is more about, for outdoor things, this would be goal posts for athletic fields or bleacher seats for athletic fields, that kind of thing.
Okay. I was going to lead to a point where private money has been offered to me to add more swings, that kind of thing, to parks in a very fast-growing neighborhood that we all know I'm the counselor of, and we all know the challenges in that neighborhood. If private money is offered, does it go into one of those funds, the one that you just mentioned? Or does that sit somewhere else? How do we manage that?
Through the chair, I'll start, and then I'll ask Ms. Krulik to add if she has any additional comments. But the city has a donations policy. So
Yes.
if a private entity or person wanted to donate funds to the city for that purpose, we have a policy and a procedure to take care of that. And then, yes, if it's for a specific purpose, like refurbishing a playground, that's where it would go.
Excellent. I'll talk to you offline about that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tonelli?
Thanks. So being one of the fellows who asked for this report originally, I appreciate getting it. And following it through, trying to track something I really know nothing about and learn from it. You know, you don't know what you get till you ask for it. As I mentioned to Mayor Brzezinski, that one of the things I noticed in the past was the recycling yard waste and garbage carts. They had their own spend every year. It was about $400,000 per category. I think it used to show up in here. Has that been moved out of here, or am I misreading my capital charts?
Does it go through utility? Through the chair, we believe it should be in here. We'll go through the detail and see where we can find where it is. Because I know I've talked to Mr. Doney about it. We're not,
Oh, maybe I
We're
missed
not
it then
u-
here. I
we're-
thought you guys got it moved over already to do with the utility and maybe, okay, well, I was looking. yeah.
no, it's so, because I think solid waste goes through general ops, not through utilities. So the waste receptacles at people's homes should be in here, and we do have a small inventory. We have been using less of them, so I know I've had this conversation when we're coming to budget time.
Well, and yeah,
We're
I've
not,
watched the
we're not
budget
going
time.
through as many as we had anticipated, I believe, but Mr. Doney can obviously speak to that in more
Yeah,
detail.
I know I squeezed you guys on that lots before, so yeah.
So maybe what I'll ask is if we could bring this back when we start talking about it in our meetings in September. Because I just don't know if we can
Yeah.
see it in this list.
34.
Found it. Yes, that is it.
But using that as an
Thank
example
you,
to
Mayor.
understand the move through and what the spends are, also understanding where this comes and goes. Like I said, it's new information, but it's going to be very useful watching as it compiles and goes through, so thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, if there are no questions or discussions have finished, I'll ask the mover if you want to close debate. Councillor Hughes? Do you want to close debate?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we'll call the vote. I'll ask the clerk to call the vote.
Councillor Staclease,
In favor.
Jamie Eng,
In favor.
Rob Willman,
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli,
In favor.
Mayor Baczynski,
In favor.
and yourself, Mr. Chair.
In favor.
The motion carries.
We'll have a resolution for a private session. Can I have someone move a motion for private session, please? Councillor Declease? What's that? Can we take a 5-minute recess and come back?